Hi everyone. Now, all over the world, APIs are very important, and we did look at our previous videos why APIs are very popular. Now, APIs are popular, and it is a backbone of any microservices system altogether, which is part of an software architecture. But what is important is these APIs are supposed to be secure. Now, if we look at the news that's coming all over the world, there are digital lives which are dependent on how our APIs are secure. Even application security is two critical areas, specifically API vulnerability, okay, and that's related to supply chain failures, or it could lead to a big application security itself. Apart from that, organizations and enterprises are looking to secure their API connections which are already existing, okay, and API security is also very important from a perspective of millions of dollars which are getting invested or for the existing system which are already having lots of impacts on the business or the data security as such. Enough emphasize so you can understand our APIs have to be very secure. Now, if we look at the modern applications as such, these applications, 90% of them are secure, and that's how the enterprise applications are being designed as well requires secure API testing as well. Now, modern application looks something similar to this. That is, the user tries to access through a password to the client, but client does not provide access to the user. User has to provide a password, and that's being responded as a token from the server as such. Okay, and the client responds back with token, and then the resource server is getting accessed by the user. So more the modern application are designed in such a way that these APIs are secure. When these APIs are secure, it is important that we do the secure API testing. Now, it's not simple API that we will be testing as such, but we will require to check whether these APIs are really secure or not, and that's where secure API testing comes into picture. Now, whenever we look at this architecture, which we will be thinking from a perspective that these are secure APIs, these are related to authorization of the users, this is related to authentication of the users, how these terms are very different from each other, and OAuth is a mechanism through which the latest security is being developed, and APIs are designed in such a way that only secure users, authenticated users, authorized user are able to access the API through the mechanism of OAuth. And we will be looking at access tokens as well. And it is very important that these access tokens are used to test our APIs as such from a perspective of secure API testing. Now, we'll be using Java as a programming language. We'll be using Maven as a automation framework. We'll be using Rest Assured, which is a trusted and most widely used API testing framework as such. We'll be using Cucumber, which is a BDD framework, which is behavior driven development framework, which is again one of the most widely used frameworks in organizations. And we'll be using Intellij setup. Okay, so we'll be using IDE, which is Intellij, which is kind of latest as well, and we will be testing these secure APIs through authentication and authorization perspective. So we'll be looking at what's an API and why is it popular. This is already covered in one of our previous API testing tutorial in the same YouTube channel. We have looked at from a perspective where does API testing really come handy. We have looked from a perspective of understanding verbs related to APIs. We have looked from a perspective of what do we have to validate in API testing. So all these four core concepts of APIs have been already covered in a YouTube in our channel, which I'll be providing in the description so that you can revise your core concepts of why API is specifically required. Now, the important parameter that we are going to cover in this particular YouTube video is we will try to look from a perspective what's an authorization and what is an authentication. Both are different terms altogether and both have their own aspects. We'll be looking at some sample real-time secure APIs. We'll be looking at a petfinder application, and we'll be using the username and password or API key to perform our secure transactions or secure APIs as such, we'll be using Postman tool to perform some manual API test on this secure APIs first before we start with test automation. So it is important to understand how it really works in Postman, how we are able to test it manually before we start with automation. After that, we will proceed with practical hands-on, and this is where the test automation will really start. We will start with installation of Intellij ID in local machine. Now, if you are already done with this particular step number 6, what I would request you to do in description of this particular YouTube video, I have put timing sections where you can directly jump. If you have already set up Intellij in your machine, you can skip this particular section. We will verify Java in the local machine, and if it's not there, we'll install it, and then we'll set up the system and environment variable. If you have done the step already, I will request you to skip this step. Then we will verify Maven in the local machine, and if it's not there, we will install it. Again, if you have already performed this step, then I'll request you to skip this step. Create a Maven project and add Cucumber dependency. Now this is something that I'll request you to please watch from step number 9, that is create a Maven project and add Cucumber dependency, because we will be creating a totally new project and this is specific to our secure APIs as such, and we'll add the Cucumber dependency. So if you have already performed step number 6, step number 7, step number 8 somewhere already, that is your local machine is up and running with IntelliJ, Java and Maven, then I will request you to skip those, but you can start with step number 9, which is create a Maven project and add the Cucumber dependency. After that, we will add Rest Assured dependency. Now, Rest Assured is required for our HTTP request as such. Now, because APIs are HTTP request, we will require this dependency and we will heavily use Rest Assured. We will create feature files. There will be couple of scenarios. Those are two positive scenarios as well as two negative scenarios from a perspective of testing secure APIs. We will create related step definitions. So step definitions will be created which are related to these feature files that we create. After that, we will add the step definition to get access token. Now this is a very important step. We will have to get access token, which is time based access token as such. We will retrieve that in our test step. After that, we will add the step definition to get the animal. So we have an API which uses this authorization and authentication. Our main intention is to get the animal types from our petfinder.com. That's the application. But having said that, we will have to get access token first in order to retrieve this animals from this application. Otherwise, we will not be able to proceed. We'll create Cucumber runner file, which will make our framework easier to use. And at last, we will be looking at the Cucumber HTML report, how our four features, that is four tests related to secure APIs, are getting generated. At the end of the tutorial, will be able to generate successfully an HTML report, so that it's visible for the users as well, that how many tests have really passed and what tests have really been run in our Cucumber runner files as such. So let's proceed with the step number 1. Alright, now we will try to understand what's an authorization, what's an authentication, and what is the API testing involving secure APIs. Now these might be sounding very synchronous, that is authorization and authentication as such, but there is a clear differences and distinction between these kind of words, which I'll be explaining in this particular video. Okay, and this is very synchronous to what secure APIs or API testing involving secure APIs are. So let's proceed to understand that. You can imagine a pet finder. Okay, pet finder is one of the websites available publicly in the domain as such, and this particular website can be used by a valid user, and they can enter into petfinder.com and they can enter into this particular UI. Okay, UI screen as such. Now there are a couple of buttons on the top which is sign up, login, so you can create your own user and then you can try to search a pet inside this particular website. Okay, so what I have shown here is a valid user. They are trying to enter into pet finder and then trying to use that particular website. Okay, so they might be able to do the search of the pet, but having said that, there is a particular button or page as such where they can really log in. They can use their email address and password and they can try to log in inside this website. Okay, So considering this is a valid user, so most of the times it will be a valid user, they will be trying to enter into this particular website, which is good. This is what is intended for the website to do. All right. Now, what really happens in real world? Okay, not every user is a valid user. It could be a hacker as well. It could be an invalid user, and it is trying to hack the website as such. And most probably 99.99% the websites get hacked is because they don't have secure APIs. All right. Now, there are mechanisms where the organizations don't use APIs as secure APIs. What they end up having is a particular website getting hacked by the hacker as such. All right. Now, this is not good because it can lead to financial issues, financial problems of that particular website. So, 99.99% organizations or enterprises, when they are building a website, they will make sure that the website is secure enough and it has the authentication and authorization capabilities so that the hacker do not hack the websites, or it could lead to financial problems as such. All right. And it could lead to security threat as such. You can imagine that hacker, if the website is not secure enough, then the hackers would hack it and they could retrieve the data, or they could leak the data as such, and they it will be a huge loss to the company as such. All right, so that is why it is important for the websites to be very secure, and the website can be very secure not only with the UI stuff, but the APIs have to be secure as such from an enterprise specification. All right, so let's understand what is authentication, what is authorization, and this is pretty important because this is how the website can be really secure or robust enough so that security threat doesn't really happen. So let's try to understand what is authentication. Okay, authentication is something which defines who are you. Okay, so it authenticates the user and checks when the user is trying to access a website or they are trying to access particular application. That is the process where the user is really validated on who the real user is. Okay, so they are kind of prompted to enter the username and password, that is a login page as such, which authenticates the user who really he is. Okay, if it's a valid user, it makes sense that the authentication is successful. But if it's a hacker or an invalid user, it is important that the authentication fails and the invalid or a hacker is not able to enter the application or the website as such. All right, so authentication is very important, and before authorization, authentication has to be a process where the valid user has been checked or not. The second thing which is important from security perspective is authorization. Okay, now, authorization is what permissions do you really have. So, once the user is validated, whether they are really authenticated, that's the first process. But in order to check what is the real authorization or what permissions that valid user really has, that is authorization. Okay, so valid user might be valid, but they might not have permissions on certain pages. Okay, if he's not an admin and he's just a basic user, he should not have access to certain pages on the websites. So this is where the authorization comes into picture. All right, so these words are very much used together, but there is a clear distinction and difference between the two of authentication and authorization. And really, these are the questions that comes into picture when authentication and authorization really happen. All right, now I'll just give you an example where the security of the APIs really come. Okay, now I have tried to depict here as a website which is petfinder.com, and it's a valid user, and what your user does is they try to enter or they try to view the petfinder.com, they try to enter into this website as such. Now from the graphical user interface, or what is visible to the eyes as such, what can be really happening is they can access this particular website, but having said that, it is required to be secure APIs. Okay, in the backend it has to be secure APIs. The UI talks to the database or the application programming interface, which is the backend system. Okay, now if it's not a secure APIs, you can imagine the hacker can hack it, But having said that, if it is secure, it is important that it user is really authenticated and authorized, so that they can access the APIs as such. All right. So this is how we generally have the security layer as such in the whole application, so that the valid user can be authenticated and authorized before they can be routed to a particular page on the website as such. Now, when the user tries to access this particular website from a different technology altogether, it can be opened, the website can be accessed through desktop or it can be accessed through the phone as such. The user can access both the channels. Okay. Now, when the user tries to access it through a React JS or Angular as such, Angular and React are the technology of the websites as such, right? And of the front end as such, and Android and Apple are iOS as well, are mobile app through which the user can really access. Now you can imagine when the user tries to access this website, what he is able to see on the screen is a graphical user interface. Okay, he's clicking on buttons, he's performing operations on the UI as such. But what really happens in the background or a backend system is it's trying to make a get call, it's trying to make a post call, put call, patch call, delete call. Okay, so whenever a user is trying to search something or trying to insert something, what really happens is get call, post call, put call, patch call, delete call really happens in the backend systems. Okay, it makes a call in the database systems. Now, the before this get, post, put, patch, delete is performed, and because these are secure APIs in this case, it is important that the access token. So what I have depicted here is it is important that the access token is received, which determines that the user is really a valid user. Now, if the user is not a valid user and it's a hacker or an invalid user, what will happen is he will not receive the access token. So access token is a mechanism which authenticates and authorizes the valid user from accessing the database or accessing the websites or the web application as such. All right, I'll try to make this flow more interesting or from a learning perspective, and have depict what I've done here is I have depicted this whole get operations through which we will be able to understand that how the secure APIs really work. All right, now what we will try to understand here is there when the get operations is really performed by the user. Okay, now user is trying to access the web application, and a get operation is performed in the backend system. A request is sent to a URL. Okay, a request is sent to a API endpoint URL, and then response is received. Okay, now one thing which will happen if these are secure APIs and if the access token is not really generated, what will happen is we will get a response code as 401 unauthorized. Okay, now what it means is the user is not authorized to access these APIs, and then and there itself the user will not be able to proceed. Okay, now this is in case of invalid user. So invalid user tries to access an API and he gets 401 unauthorized. So in this way we have made a mechanism that is secure APIs. Now what if it's a valid user? Okay, now if a valid user wants to really access the APIs, what he has to do, he has to get an access token. He should not get 401 unauthorized. So we are looking from a perspective of valid user now, where the request is sent and he is getting 401 authorized. So before get operation is performed, what he has to do, he is required to perform a get operation request. Okay, so he has to get the access token first. That's a different URL altogether. And what will happen is, if it's a valid user, what will happen is he has to provide the username, password, the correct username, password to the server, and server will respond back with an access token one in the response. Now this access token is a time based expiry. Okay, this is very important to understand, this access token is a time based expiry. If it is not time based, you can imagine the user has tried to get that access token and access token is not getting expired. So what will happen is after 1 day or 2 days, this access token will be still valid, and due to which anybody who is an invalid user can access this access token and in turn can use it to authenticate himself. So we don't want the invalid user to authenticate himself and try to enter into the URL. So it's a best practice to make the access token time based expiry, and generally what happens is time based will be very less time, and lesser the time it is better. It can be around 15 minutes, it can be 10 minutes, but if it is for 1 hour or 2 hours, you can imagine that any invalid user can try to access this access token and then try to get the URL as such. So this access token, once received in the first get operation, this access token is passed as a request header. Okay, so this get operation, while we are performing the get operation as such, the API endpoint URL, we are passing this as a header, which is an access token, and only then we will get a response code of 200, which is in case of the valid user. So it is very important that we get the access token first before we perform the get operation. Otherwise, we will get something like 401 unauthorized. That's how we try to access the secure APIs. Now, this is in case of get operation. Now, you can imagine when we are trying to perform an insert or an update, what really happens is we try to perform a post operation. Okay, it could be post, it could be put, it could be delete. Now, in the similar fashion, what we understood from the get operation, similar to that, we happen to have the post, put, delete operation. Now, in case of post, put, we are supposed to get the response code as 201. Okay, and if an invalid user tries to access this API and tries to perform a post operation as such, he will get 401 because the access token has not got generated. Now, if it's a valid user, right? If it's a valid user, what really has to be performed is they have to get the access token first. Okay, now this access token will be performed by a get operation. By get operation, the user has to perform a call to the server, and from there the access token will get generated. Again, this is a time based expiry. Now, this time-based expiry access token has to get generated first, and this access token has to be passed in the post put delete operation as such, through which this valid user can really access this particular API as such. Now, one of the question which my student asked is, can I use the access token which had got generated here in this case in the get operation? Yes, you can use it as long as your access token has not expired. Okay, that is very important. As long as your access token has not expired, there will be a time based, it would be 10 minutes or 15 minutes. As long as it's not expired and you have the access token handy, you can use that to perform your post operation as well. That is also possible. You can reuse the access token as long as it's not expired. That is very important. And generally, all enterprise solutions, even 99.99% applications as such, which are publicly available, those have these kind of authentication or access token time based expiry and authenticated authentication authorization, so that it is not hacked by a hacker or an invalid user. It can lead to a security threat as such if it's a really not secure APIs. But considering that most of the enterprises have learned past mistakes, they have made their websites more secure as such. And as a software tester or an automation tester, it is important that we require to test the security aspect of the website as such, which might have been designed, so that we test its capabilities, so that there is no exposure of security as such or data as such. Now, data leakage can be a big problem. It can be a financial problem for the enterprise solutions. So that's the reason they have come up with this kind of development as such. And this, from testing perspective, it is important for us to test a robust test framework which validates this aspect as such. All right, now in order to use petfinder.com APIs, what we will have to do is we will have to come into this particular URL, which is petfinder.com, and this is a section created specially for developers or automation testers basically, and it gives an idea about API calls which is being made over here. And what it's giving an idea is that you can use RESTful APIs. Okay, and these RESTful APIs are getting authenticated via OAuth. So OAuth is a mechanism to make the API secure. It's a kind of a open standard authorization protocol or framework that provides application with the ability of secure designated access. Okay, so here there are a couple of ways to do it. First, it's saying that to begin you need to create an account. Okay, so what I will do is I'll just create an account for demonstration purpose. I'll just click on create an account and I'll give the name over here, and you can set up a password over here and click on sign up. And I've got a successful message over here for registering with the petfinder.com. So I have got an authentication. I have got my username and password got registered with this particular website. Now, once you have created an account, what you can do is you can go to a petfinder API, now otherwise called a client ID and secret. Okay, so I'm just going to this particular link to request a API key. Now, the moment I click on that particular link, you will be able to see we can get an API key. I'll just click on get an API key and you get a message that API access granted. You have been granted Finder API access and assigned an API key and secret. Okay, so I have got an API key which I'll copy and put it in a notepad and a secret as well. Now I'll save this particular API key as well as secret somewhere in my notepad. Just copy this one and use it as an API key. So I've got two details. Okay, one is an API key and another is a secret. So I'll just save it somewhere safe so that nobody can so that I can use it in my code as well. So I'll go back. So as per the instructions, I have got an API key over here, which is API key, which is also called as client ID. Okay, and secret as well. So now the next step is once we have got the API key and the secret, we can hit this particular API which is being shown over here for authentication purposes. So you can see that there is an API endpoint URL which is API petfinder.com v2 OAuth token. So we will use this particular API endpoint URL in the Postman to get our authentication or access token details. So let's do that. But before that, we need to have Postman in our machine as such. Alright, now in order to test our APIs, any of the operation that is get or post or put or delete operations on an API, that is the URL, what we will require to have is some kind of tool. Now before we start with automation, general idea is to test those APIs manually, whether those APIs are really working or not. And once it is working, we can go for automation for regression purposes. Now, one important tool for this is Postman, and Postman is the leading tool of API testing. If you go in Google search and then if you just enter the details of the Postman download as such, what you will be able to do is you'll be able to get details of downloading the Postman and get started for free. So it's kind of a message. You can click on that link and there are a couple of options. One is that you can probably try to use Postman in a browser or you can use it in an app. Okay, best method is to use it in an app rather than the browser. You can save those URLs and as well as the Postman collection as such, which you can reuse later. Okay, and you can use it in the browser as well. It has its own advantages. When you use it in the browser, you can kind of log in, that is sign in, and then try to save those URLs later on, then you can use it as well. So in this purpose, what I'll do is I'll just click on this Windows 64 bit and then continue with my installation. Once the installation is complete and you open up a Postman in your desktop, what you need to do is you can probably search for Postman, and this is an app which I have already downloaded and installed. Once that is done, this particular app will get opened up. Okay, so this is the app of Postman where you can really test the APIs and then figure out what this particular API is getting returned in the request and the response. Okay, now that is one particular step. Once your installation, download and installation is complete of Postman, what you can do is you can have a look at some of the sample APIs. Okay. Alright, now that we have installed the Postman in our machine, what we can do is we can open up Postman in our machine, okay, which I have shown in my previous video how to get it installed. After installation, what we have to do is we have to go back to our petfinder.com, which is our application, which is exposing certain APIs. Okay, and we have already seen that this is the application that we'll be looking from this particular video perspective. We have stored the API key as well as secret somewhere in our notepad, and that is ready to be used. But having said that, what we will try to do is we will try to use one of the APIs of petfinder.com without the API key or secret. Okay, API key and the client ID is the same. Okay, there is no confusion as such. Some of the students get confused what is a client ID, what is a client secret, and how is the API key as well as the what's a secret key altogether. But what we have to understand is that we require a couple of values over here. One is a client ID, which I am storing it as an API key as I have stored here as such, and then there is a secret. Okay, so secret is the client secret. Okay, now this can be interchangeably used, that is a client ID as well as client secret as well as API key and secret as such. Now it depends on what terminology which you use, because when you communicate to the developer, okay, you have to be clear what exactly you are specifying. Some of the developer they might say as client and not a client ID, and some of the developers may say okay, this is the secret key or this is the client secret as such, but you have to be clear what exactly is the details. Okay, now coming back to our manual testing as such, what I mentioned is we will try to hit a particular API of the pet finder. Okay, so I'll just scroll down here and I'll try to look at a particular API which is easy to use. So I'll just scroll down, and these are the animals and these are the endpoints. Okay, so there is get animals, there is get animal, there is get animal types. Okay, so this looks pretty good for our example. So I'll just click on this get animal types, and this is the API which is present. So what I will try to do is I'll in the Postman I'll try to create a collection. Okay, so let me open up Postman, and over here what I'll do is first of all I'll create a collection. So I'll just click on new button and then click on collection, and this is a new collection. I'll just rename it. So I'll just click on these three dots and I'll just rename it and name it as pet finder, so that it's easier to identify in this whole list of collections. Okay, so you can probably ignore other collections that I have in my Postman. I have been testing some other APIs as well. You can probably ignore those, but we can focus on this particular collection which I'm using for my sample video, which is pet finder. Okay, now I'll click on add request, and the moment I click on add request, I'll just add here as a new request, which is get animal type. Okay, so I'll just name this as get animal type, and after that what I'll do is I'll come here and I'll just copy this particular URL. Okay, so this is a endpoint URL of pet finder which will give us all the animal types as such. Okay, so I have provided this get and api.petfinder.com, and this is our endpoint URL. This is a HTTP request that we'll send across as an API. Okay, so I'll just click on send, and the moment I click on send, you can get a response over here. As you can see, the response, it is 401 unauthorized. Okay, so what it's showing is that we are not authorized to look at the API. So you can understand from this example that it is very important to provide the access token. Okay, so access token is a mechanism through which we can enter those details that we are authenticated user, authorized user. Only then we can proceed with hitting this API. So this is the whole example where I wanted to show that without the secret key or access token as such, we will not be able to proceed. And this is how we stop the hackers or the invalid users not access the application as such or APIs as such. So in this way, petfinder.com is a secure application, is a secure API altogether, we are not able to get the animal types. We don't know what this endpoint URL really does. Okay, endpoint URL of this application really does, because we have not been authorized yet. So this is a very good mechanism of security as such, which most of the applications behave like this. And this is why, this is the precise reason I wanted to show a particular video. How do we really automate these kind of APIs? Okay, now that we understand that this API is not working, what I will do is I will go back to the application. Okay, and I'll just look for OAuth token. So I'll just scroll up and I'll look for a OAuth token that we had been looking at. Okay, so as we reached at this particular application as such, you can see that there is an OAuth token here. Okay, and I'll just copy this endpoint URL, go back to application, and I'll create one more add request. Okay, so I just created, and over here I'll just name this as get access token. So we have to authorize first, we have to get the access token first, and this has to be a post API. How do I know that? If I go back here, if I copy this one, a snippet copied, if I go back and if I try to import this one and paste it over here, you can see that it's a post call. Okay, so there is a curl command. As you can see that there is a curl command over here. You can provide the curl command, or you can use this, enter this HTTP manually as well. So both the applications you can, both the ways you can do that. Okay, so get access token, it's a post command. Okay, and I'll probably save it. And the tendency is, if you do not save your API details or HTTP request in the Postman, it tends to get refreshed. Okay, so that's the reason it is important that you kind of save this before you proceed to some other sections altogether. So we have entered the post application. Okay, so I'm just copying the curl command here. I'm coming back and clicking on this import button, and then I'm getting the details. Okay, if I go to the body, right, if I open up this one, you can see the details like the URL has got automatically updated over here as a post command, and in the body section you can see that there is a grant type which is client credentials, then client ID, client underscore ID in fact, and client underscore secret. Okay, so what this particular URL is trying to do is this particular URL is trying to get this details which is client ID and client secret. So what I'll do is I'll click on save. Okay, and the moment I try to click on save, this is a functionality of the Postman. It is trying to look for a collection where we exactly want to save it. So I had already created a collection which is petfinder. I'll just click on it, and I will just name this as get access token -1. I'll just save it, and you can see that get access to token -1 is created for us. Okay, even the body is present. Okay, so that's a very good mechanism that if you have a curl command, you can directly come here and import it, and you need not manually add any body details as such, or you need not specifically add authorization headers or body. It will automatically come over here. Now if I go to get access token here, okay, there is no body because we were trying to enter it manually. Okay, so you can enter it manually, but yeah, you have to make sure that all the details like the body details and all that are correct or not, because it was already being provided as a curl command over here. That's why we could easily enter it. So I wanted to show my students that these both ways are possible. So I'll just delete it because I don't want it, both of them. I'll just delete, and then I'll just rename this as get access token. And as I mentioned, you have to exclusively save it. So I'll just click on save, and I'll come to access token. Okay, now is the magic that we want to really do. That is, we have to provide the client ID and the secret. So what I will do is we will go to the notepad where exactly we had stored the secret and the API key. So I'll just copy this API key, which is again a client underscore ID. So I'll just replace this client ID and client secret. So I'll just replace this, in fact copy this secret and come over here and paste the secret over here. All right, and after that I'll just save it. All right, once we have saved, what we have to do is because our URL is present, our client ID and the client secret is entered as well, we'll click on send. Now, once we click on send, a magic has happened. What magic has happened is we are able to get access token. Okay, so this is the access token which I was talking about, which is very important. And please note that there is a value over here which is expires underscore in. Okay, so it is important to understand this expires at a particular value which is 3600. Now, if you don't know what this 3600 really means, it is important that you check with your developer whether this could be milliseconds or it could be seconds or it could be minutes as such. Okay, now if I go back to the documentation as such of petfinder.com and developers, now over here you can see that there is a value called expires in, gives a time in seconds. Okay, the token may be used. After this, your system must request a new to use that. Okay, so what it means is this particular access token is valid only for 3600 seconds, which happens to be 60 minutes. Okay, so it is valid for 1 hour, but if it gets expired, then you have to again request for an access token. Now, this is pretty important because what I'm going to say is very important from test automation perspective. You can imagine you are trying to run your automation scripts again and again. It might happen that you run it at 8 o'clock in the morning, and after that you are trying to run it at 12 p.m. in the afternoon. So the access token that you have used at 8 a.m. in the morning will not be valid for what you have been using, what you want to use it at 12 p.m. Okay, so this is kind of a mechanism that you will have to again hit your access token and get it generated so that you can really use it at a different time. So whenever you are designing an automation scripts, it is important that you get the access token first, then only you proceed with the second API that you really want to access. So our intention was to get the get animal type, but the whole exercise to perform this get access token was to generate the access token so that we can use it in the get animal type. Okay, so I'll just save this and come back to the get animal type. Now we were getting unauthorized token. Okay, now that is a good thing that this API was requesting for an access token. Now we will provide the access token. So for providing the access token, what we have to do is there is a section over here called headers. Okay, and over here we have to provide a authorization header as such. Now I'll just write here as authorization, and you can see that there is a IntelliSense which I am getting. So I'll just select authorization, and it is important that we provide a prefix over here. So generally the tokens are bearer, so we have to provide the prefix as bearer, and over after that we have to provide the access token. So I'll just come here and then copy this particular access token which is a valid one. Okay, and then I'll come here and then I'll provide the access token over here. I'll just save it and then click on send. All right, now as you can see, our unauthorized error has changed to a valid thing because we have provided the access token. Okay, so we provided the access token and we are able to get a valid response, a big response in fact, and we are getting 200 okay, which is a status. So our status has changed from 401 unauthorized to 200 okay because we are authenticated as well as authorized correctly, and we are a valid user as the application knows. Okay, now server has authenticated and authorized us via this particular API which is get access token, as you can see, and we are using that access token and passing it in this particular header as an authorization. Okay, we are passing it as a header and we are getting a response over here. So what I will do is I'll just copy this response. Okay, and I'll use a web application which is freely available, so that is called as JSON viewer as such. And even in fact there are good number of JSON viewer which are present publicly, but I'll just select JSON viewer online over here, and I'll just paste the response, and you can see that the node response has been exactly which we are in the JSON format, we are getting in the node format. Okay, now as you can see, there are responses of different type of animals, so I'll just reduce these nodes, and if we look at these types, there are total 8 types. Okay, from 0 to 7 there are 8 types of animals. First one is a dog, second one is a cat, third one is a rabbit, fourth one is small and furry, fifth one is a horse, sixth one is a bird, seventh one is scales, fins, and others, and eighth one is a barnyard. So good thing is we are getting the animal types as such. What we can provide here is that we can put some kind of conditions or some kind of validations whether we are really getting 200 status okay, and we are getting a correct response, like for example the dog as well as the cat, horse, all those values are really coming or not in our test automation, just for demonstration purposes. So this is how we perform the validation using access tokens as well, which is very important, and most of the application, as we can see, that are designed in such a way that without access token you cannot really proceed. So even if you are designing your automation scripts, it is very important that you consider getting this access token first and then only proceed with your app API that you really want to test. So for installation of IntelliJ ID in the local machine, what you need to do is you need to click on Google and then look for an IntelliJ Community Edition. You can search this in your browser, and then you can click on the download IntelliJ, the leading Java and Kotlin IDE. Once you click on the link, the first link that you will be able to see is IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate, but you do not require to have Ultimate version. What you need to have is the Community Edition, which is free for you, and you can select as download based on your requirement, whether you need a .zip file or .exe file. But .exe file is a better option. You can click on download, and this will get automatically downloaded in your default downloads folder. Now once this has got downloaded, what you can do is you can go to your downloads folder and just double click on this .exe file, and once you double click on the .exe file in your downloads folder, you will be able to see something like this, which is IntelliJ IDEA Community Edition Setup. You can click on next, and what it will do is it will select a C drive, which is a default folder in your machine, and it will try to get installed over there. So this is the path. You have to make a note of this path, which is C drive, program files, JetBrains, IntelliJ IDEA Community Edition. Okay, so the version which I have in my machine currently is 2022.3.2. You can select whatever is related to your specific version. It could be 2023 as well, but it will same as what I have in my machine. So I'll just click on next, and then it will give a destination folder where exactly do you require to install it. Click on next, 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 and you will be able to get a successful message that the installation has really happened in your machine. Now, once the installation has happened in your machine, you have got a successful message. You can go into your search bar in your machine and then just search here as IntelliJ, and you will be able to see that the moment you type IntelliJ in your search button, you'll be able to see that something like this is getting opened up, which is IntelliJ IDEA Community Edition 2022. So you can double click or single click on this particular window, and something like this will open up, which is welcome to idea, and you can click on create a new project to start with, which will be starting soon, or you can customize and look at the plugins, or click on learn just to learn about IntelliJ. But what I would suggest is we have to create a new project. Okay, so this was my intention, that you at least install IntelliJ idea, and something like this window should open up so that you understand, okay, IntelliJ is really set up. Before creating the new project, we have to make sure that our Java and Maven is really set up correctly in our local machine. So those couple of steps we will be doing soon in the next section. So we are done with step number 1, which is installation of IntelliJ IDEA in local machine. Now the second step that we'll really require to do is a prerequisite, which is step number 2, verify Java in local machine, and if required we have to install it, and then setting up the system and the environment variable. Now let's get that done. For verifying whether the Java is really present in a local machine, what we need to do is we need to search a command prompt in our machine. So I'll just click on this search button over here, and I'll just type over here as command prompt. I'll just single click on this, and something which like this will open up, which is a command prompt. Now it will by default go to a path which is C users and then your user, which is specifically in your machine. Now I'll enter a simple command which is Java hyphen hyphen version in this particular machine, and press enter on my keyboard. Now what I have got here is Java 11.0.19. What it means is Java is really set up in this machine. Now it may happen that you might not have Java in your machine, which might show that it's not able to understand the command of Java. If that is the case, that you have to install Java in your machine and set up the system variables. Okay, I'll explain that step as well. Now what we need to do is we need to search in a browser as Java and download, and press enter on our keyboard, and you will be able to see that there are a couple of links over here. One is Oracle link and another is directly a Java link. You can go on either of the locations and get Java installed in your machine. Okay, it really doesn't matter. Recently or previously, what had happened is Java was acquired by Oracle. That's the reason there are a couple of links over here. Now I'll just click on Oracle link, which is Java downloads. And the moment I do that, you can see that this particular page opens up, which is specific related to Java downloads. Now the Java latest version currently available in the market is Java 21 and Java 17. Okay. Now these might be the stable versions of Java. But what I have done is I have selected something which is JDK 11. Now I just scroll a little bit down, and you can see that Java 8 version is also available and Java 11 version is also available. Now it depends on you what you really need to select. Now I have selected Java 11 for the purpose of stability. Java 11 is quite stable, and I'll just click on this Java 11 tab, and then there is an option of Java 11.0.20. Now depends on your OS, which is operating system, whether which operating system do you have in your local machine, and then you can get it installed in your local machine. Now I have Windows currently, which I'm using in this particular video. I'll just go to Windows tab, and then there is a 64 installer. Now I'll just click on this downloads, and the moment I do that, you can understand that this gets downloaded in the default downloads folder in my machine. Okay, so make sure that where exactly is your default downloads folder. Generally it is under C drive into your local machine where it really gets downloaded. Now you can double click it or you can single click it so that it gets downloaded in your local machine as such. Now, once you have downloaded your particular .exe file, you can double click on that particular .exe file, and you will be able to see that some window will get appeared, and you can get it installed specifically in your machine. Just proceed with particular steps of installation of Java, and then you'll be able to make sure that you understand where exactly the Java has got installed. Now by default, I'll just explain where exactly Java gets installed, and I'll show in my machine as well. I'll go to C drive, and then I'll go to program files, and I'll go to Java folder, and over here I can see that there is a JDK-11 folder that has got created. Okay, now once it has got created, you can just verify what all folders you have. So you have a bin folder, you have a conf folder, you have a lib folder. Okay, now I had already got this done. as soon as my Java got installed and I clicked on that .exe file and my installation got completed. Now the reason I'm requesting you guys to verify that which particular path is for you in your machine, it is important that we set up the environment variable in a particular machine. Okay, now this is the path exactly, which is C drive, program files, Java, JDK hyphen 11 bin. Now this exact path has to be entered in our system variables, which we'll be doing right now. So what I'll do is I'll search environment variables, and the moment I search environment in this particular section, you'll be able to see that there is an edit system variables control panel. Okay, now I'll just click on it and something like this will open up. As you can see, there is a system properties, and I'll click on environment variables, and the moment I click on environment variables, this particular window opens up. Now this particular window is important for us so that our Java really gets recognized by our Windows file as such. Now Java is a product of Oracle, and it used to be earlier within Sun microsystem. Now Windows is a operating system which is different from Sun microsystems or Oracle as such. That's the reason we have to set up this environment variable and system variables so that our machine recognizes Java particularly. Okay, now the important area where the environment variable and the system variable has to set up is, you can see that there is a path over here. Now you need to double click on it, and you have to provide the exact path. So you can see over here we had our Java got installed at C drive, program files, Java, JDK. Okay, so exactly the path I have given over here, you can see that C program files, Java, JDK hyphen 11. Okay, I have not given bin over here, but I have just given JDK hyphen 11. Now this is the environment variable I have set it up, and I'll just close it and I'll go to the system variables. Now over system variables, I have set up a Java underscore home. Okay. Now I'll just click on this, and as you can see, I have set up a variable name which is Java underscore home, and C drive program files Java JDK-11. Now we have to give the path where exactly is our bin folder. Okay, that exact path has to be given. Now I have given in the system variable, and I have provided the path under this, which is environment variable as well. And now I am set up with my Java paths. Okay, so system variable is also done, environment variable is also done. Please note that if you are running Java first time in your machine, this will not have been set up, and that's the reason I'm giving this instruction to the people who are trying this in their machine, that you have to set up both this system variable as well as environment variable, and then come back and run this command of Java hyphen hyphen version. Once you have set up this, you have to come back to command prompt and run this particular command, which is Java hyphen hyphen version. And the moment you do that, you can see that you are getting a response back as some kind of version that you have already set up. Okay, so my PC contains Java 11.0.19. That's the reason it is showing over here as Java 11.01.19. Now you might have installed Java 11.0.20, that will get appeared over. Okay, so this is important in order to proceed for setting up our project as such. All right, now our step number 2 is also done, which was a prerequisite. Now what we have to do is a prerequisite verify Maven whether it's really present in our local machine or not. If it is not present, what we have to do is we have to install it. Okay, and then the setting of the system and the environment variable. Now this is very similar to our step number 2, but it is little different as well. That's why I had to set it up that this is a prerequisite before we proceed. Now what we have to do is similar to what we did in the step number 2. We will go to command prompt. So I'll just search command prompt here, and something like this will open up as a command prompt. Now I have to enter a command over here, which is mvn and hyphen version. Okay, and press enter on my keyboard. Now the moment I press enter on my keyboard, there are some details coming out. Okay, so you can see that there is an Apache version, Apache Maven already present, which is 3.9.1, and there is a Maven home setup. Okay, now it's trying to take some details from this particular area, wherein it's taking it from C drive, users, AU, downloads, Apache Maven 3.9.1 bin, and then Apache Maven 3.9.1 version, and it's giving a Java version as well. So it has already linked, the Maven itself has linked with Java. So we have done some settings of Maven as well in our system and environment variable after the download. That's the reason it is showing, okay, the Maven is already present. But if it is not present, and if it's showing that it's not able to recognize it's a mvn command, what we have to do is we have to install mvn. Okay, now there is nothing specifically called as installation of mvn. What we really do is we generally download mvn in a particular location and then set up the system and environment variables. Now let's do that. I'll just minimize this command prompt, and then I'll just go to my browser, and I'll just type here as Maven download. And the moment I press that, you can see that there is a link over here which is Apache Maven. Okay, now Maven is an Apache product, and I'll just click on download Apache Maven, and you'll be able to come on this particular page which is Apache. Now you have to specifically download a particular version of Apache. Now there are different links given over here, which is Apache Maven 3.9.1 hyphen bin. Now you can go for .zip file, or you can go for .tr, .gz as well. Now what I have done is I have clicked on this particular double clicked on this particular link, and it has gone downloaded in a particular version or a particular link where default link of the download as such. Okay, now it is important to understand where exactly this has got downloaded. Now if I search over here in my downloads folder, that is the Apache, you can see that there is a versions of different versions of Apache that I have specifically got downloaded, and this has been present in my downloads folder. Okay, that's the reason you could see that this particular, when I had run mvn hyphen version, it was picking up from particular Apache Maven, that is downloads folder. Now once you have got downloaded this particular file, you need to zip it, or you have to unzip these files, and you have to try to retrieve the location, exact location of the Apache Maven. And once you have understood where exactly is your Apache Maven, you have to search for environment again, which we had done in our step number 2. That is, we try to search the edit system variables, that is environment variables, and this particular window opens up system properties. Now in this system properties, there is a folder, there is a button which is environment variables. I'll just click on that, and you'll be able to see that there are environment variables and the system variables. Okay, now for the environment variables, we have to set up a path. I'll just double click on this path, and you can see that I have specified a particular path over here, which is percentage maven underscore home percentage backslash bin. Okay, you need to specify this particular path exactly as it is appearing over here, otherwise you will not be able to map the maven into your local machine. Okay, similar to what we had done in our step number 2, setting up Java as well. Now this is the path. Once you have specified the this particular path in the environment variable, you need to specify the system variable. Okay, so system variable, what I have done is, if I go to system variable maven home, okay, I have created this particular system variable specifically. So I just clicked on new, and I created a variable name, that is maven underscore home, and provided the variable value. Now what I did is I provided the maven underscore home as a variable name, and I provided the path exactly where the Apache Maven is present. Okay, now you can see that this is the downloads folder which where exactly it had got downloaded. So I'm not installing Maven anywhere. Okay, similar in the step number 2, we had what we had done is we had specifically installed Java, but here we are not installing Maven. We are only mapping a Maven to a particular system variable. Okay, so once you have set up the maven underscore home and you have provided the path, as you can see that the maven underscore home variable is exactly similar to what we had specified in the environment variable as well. So if I go to path, I had already specified maven underscore as a bin. So that is the mapping that I'm doing in my environment variable and the system variable. Okay. Once you have set up this, what you need to do is you need to go back to your command prompt and run your mvn-version. And what you will be able to get is Apache Maven 3.9.1. That means your Maven is also set up in your machine. So we are done with our step number 2 as well, step number 3 as well, which is verify Maven and then setting up the system environment. So we installed Intellij and then we have set up Java as well in our machine. We have set up Maven also in our machine. Now let's proceed with step number 4. All right, now that we have installed IntelliJ as well as we have Java Maven working in our machine, and in previous videos, what we did is we had manually tested our petfinder.com APIs. Okay, so we were able to get the access token from get access token API. This was the endpoint URL, and once we get the access token, we were able to get the get animal types. Okay, so we were having 8 types of animals that is getting responded in our a endpoint URL. Now let's try to automate this. Okay, so now what I will do is in the IntelliJ I will just open up IntelliJ and start coding in such a way that at least our APIs are working and we are able to do this get access token and then perform a get call of get animal type. Now for that, what we need to do is we need to open up IntelliJ in our machine. Okay, so what you can do is you can come into a search button or in your machine and then you can just type here as IntelliJ IDEA Community Edition. Okay, once you open up IntelliJ, it will look something like this. And you can probably ignore the list of projects that I have been creating, but what you can do is you can click on new project, and the moment you click on the new project, what you will get is you will be able to get details like what project do you require to create. Okay, so this is a new project that you will be able to create, and I'll just name my project as API test rest assured, and these are secure APIs. So I'll just secure access token. So I'll just name this as API test rest assured secure. Okay, so I'll just select this particular location in my machine, and it depends on where you exactly have IntelliJ in your machine. Okay, so then you can select a particular location over here, and I'm selecting Java as a language, IntelliJ as a build system, and Maven 11 version. Okay, Java as a 11 version as such in my machine. Okay, it could be 17 in your machine, depends on what latest version you have selected specifically. But if you are not getting this, what you need to do is you have to manually select it. Okay, you can click on this particular JDK button and you will have to specifically select as a detected SDK. If you are not getting it, you can come up to JDK. Okay, so you have installed Java in your machine, right? You can come to your C drive, and then you can come to program files Java and then JDK 11 specifically. Once you select over here, this JDK will get populated in your IntelliJ as such. Okay, it is very important because the project has to be associated with a JDK or a Java version, otherwise you will not be able to proceed with it. But most of the students don't get an issue with this particular step. They can probably click on add JDK and then select up to JDK path as such, and then get it associated in their machine as such. Okay, so once you have selected JDK, you can click on create button as such, and the moment you click on create button, you will get an project something like this, which is getting populated, and you have a pom.xml file. Okay, so this pom.xml file is important for project management perspective, you have to provide the dependencies as such, which you will be using in your machine, okay, in your particular project. Now I'll come to pom.xml and I'll create a tag over here, which is dependencies. And after that, what I'll do is I'll create another tag, a closing tag, in fact, which is dependencies. So this particular tag or this particular section will contain all the dependencies that we want our project to contain. Okay, so now we have to add rest assured. Now what I'll do is I'll go to internet and then search here as a Maven and Rest Assured, and I'll look at the Maven repository. Okay, so I'll go to Rest Assured over here and then click on the first link which is present. So the latest link over here is 5. Version as such for 5.4.0 version, but I'll select a 5.2.1 which happens to be stable as well. So I'll just copy this particular dependency and then I'll come back to my project. So I'll just copy this and come back to Intellij and enter the dependency over here, which is rest assured. Okay, the moment I copy over here, the moment I paste over here, you'll be able to see that there is a button over here which is Maven. Okay, so I'll just click on this so that my project gets synchronized with the latest Maven changes. So I'll just click on this Maven changes and then you can see that there is something indexing happening as well in the down below, and my project got synced with the rest assured. Now, apart from that, I will have to add the Cucumber files, okay, which is a BDD approach. So what we are trying to do here is trying to build a BDD framework, which is a behavior driven framework altogether. And we want to specifically create feature files. Okay, so I'll explain what is a BDD approach, BDD framework as such, but it is important to understand that better to develop a framework which is kind of reusable from an automation perspective, and that's how the is the best practice in the industry as well, in the IT industry, that we have to build a framework. Okay, we cannot directly go, and we can in fact directly go and use the APIs, but when we build a framework, an automation framework, it is important that it is kind of reusable and it is kind of structured so that the automation can be really performed. It has the automation framework itself has to be scalable, maintainable, and reusable. Okay, that is the beauty of the frameworks, the automation frameworks that it is. So let's understand what is a BDD or introduction to BDD as such. And once we get the idea about the BDD, then we can add the Cucumber framework as such. All right, now I just wanted to give a quick introduction to what's a BDD framework. Now, BDD framework, that is behavior driven development approach, allows the testers and the business analysts to create test cases in simple test language, generally English. And behavior driven development is a agile software development methodology in which an application is documented and designed around the behaviors a user expects to experience when interacting with it. BDD also offers the ability to enlarge the pool of input and feedback to include business stakeholders and end users who may have little software development knowledge. Due to this expanded feedback loop, development teams may more readily use BDD in continuous integration and continuous delivery environments. Now, there is a given when then formula. It's a template intended to guide the writing of acceptance tests for a user story. Given some context, when some action is carried out, then a particular set of observable consequences should obtain. Now, tools such as Cucumber encourage using of this template, though it can also be purely as heuristic, irrespective of any tool. Now, in our example in the project, what we have done is we have created 4 folders as such. One is features, second is step definition, third is pages, and fourth is utility. Now, our given when then statements will be stored in the features, but when we use those given when then, ideally those will be mapped with step definition, and those step definition will really contain the operations like clicking and where the user is really navigating, as a technical term. And pages is where we will um, design all the pages and the objects and methods as such, which we'll be covering, trying to understand during the page object model concept. And utility is where our browser driver will get stored, and any operation related to browser driver will be stored in the utility as such. Now that we are not specifically doing UI test in this particular project, we are supposed to do API testing. We don't have pages as such, but we can consider this kind of framework as well, just to do the reusability in the API testing as well. I'll explain when it really comes. And in the utility as well, as I mentioned, there will be browser driver and initializing the browser driver as such, but we don't have any browser, right? We just have the APIs to test. So still we can use utility folder as well, and I'll explain why. Utility folder as such can contain browser driver as well as hooks. Okay, so we don't have browser driver concept in APIs, but we can still use hooks. Now, what are hooks in Cucumber? Is that Cucumber supports hooks which are blocks of code that run before or after each scenario. You can define them anywhere in your project or step definition layers using the methods at the rate before and at the rate after. Cucumber hooks allow us to better manage the code workflow and helps us to reduce the code redundancy. We can say that it is unseen step which allows us to perform our scenarios or test. Okay, so we can use hooks in our project as well. So let's create this folder structure in our project so that we can really um, perform these kind of operations. All right, now that we have understood about BDD framework and what all folders require to be created in our framework, let's start creating those folders related to features and step definition as such. So what I will do is I'll go to the project inside the Intellij, and over here I'll go to source folder, and within source folder there are a couple of folders which is main as well as test. Okay, so within the test folder we will try to create those files. Okay, so under Java there are files which we will create. So I'll just right click on Java, and then I'll um, select as new, and then I'll select as package. Now you here I'll create a project or a folder which is called as features. Okay, so I'll specifically name it as features and press enter on my keyboard, and you can see that a new directory is created. Apart from that, what we will do is we will create one more directory or a folder. So I'll just right click on Java and then select as new, and then I'll go into the package, and over here I'll select as step definitions. Okay, now it is important that the spelling remains to be very accurate, and you need to provide the glue path for step definitions and features. So it doesn't really matter whether you select as capital S or small s, but please note the spelling is important. Okay, I'll just make a note of it later on as well. And apart from that, I'll create one more folder here which is utilities. Okay, so I'll just right click on Java and then select as new, and then select as package, and over here I'll just write it as utility and then press enter on my keyboard as such. Now the first thing that we have to do related to our folders that have been created now, if you notice the folders are empty. Okay, so there are no features, there are no step definitions right now in our folders. So let's create some features. Okay, so I'll go to the features, I'll just right click and select as new, and over here I'll select as file, and I'll enter here at get animals dot feature and press enter on my keyboard. Okay, so you can see that there is get on animals dot feature that has got created, and here is where we will define our feature file. Okay, so in BDD it is important that you define what is a feature as well as the scenario. So over here and in the feature file I'll define that which exactly is the feature. So this feature is about getting files, getting animals from the get API. So this will be my feature, and apart from that I will have to give scenario. Okay, so the moment I am entering scenario, you can see that there is an IntelliSense Now, the reason the IntelliSense is coming is that our project is able to understand that we are trying to enter certain details about the BDD framework or the Cucumber as such, because we have added the dependencies in our project already. Okay, so that's the reason. That's a good thing that Intellij is giving us this IntelliSense. Okay, now here is the scenario that we will be entering: get animals from the web application or from the application. So this is a very simple scenario. Now this scenario has given, when, then statement that I'll add. And what is a given statement is that I get the access token. So if you note that I am entering the given statement, so given I am an authenticated user. Okay, so I'll just state, I'll add this statement that I am an authenticated user when I hit the get animals API URL, then I get animals in the response of the API. So this is our defined scenario. Okay, get animals from applications. So very simple scenario that we have already verified manually in Postman. That is, we are able to get an access token, and then when we hit the get animals API, then I get the animals in the response of the API. Okay, this is a pretty good example. Now, as a positive scenario, this should work fine as long as I am an authenticated user. Now, apart from that, what I will try to do is I want to verify whether our APIs do not respond for an unauthenticated user. So that's kind of a negative scenario which we really want to test. So it's kind of a security test altogether, that we are verifying that our APIs are working fine, and it's not getting exposed to any unauthenticated user. So what I will do is I just copy this whole scenario, and then I'll add the scenario down below. Get animals from applications. This is the scenario. Given I am an unauthenticated user. So here I'm not providing any access token as such. Given I am an unauthenticated user, when I hit the get animals API URL, then I do not get the animals in the response of the API. Okay, so this is a validation that we are putting, that if I am an unauthenticated user, then if I try to hit the get animals API URL, then I do not get the animals in the response of the API. Now, we can still drill down our expectations or our requirements, because what we generally do is we want to validate the response codes. Okay, we want to validate the response codes as well as the response body. So we will still drill down. So what we'll do is, in the first test case, we will just put, given I am an authenticated user, when I hit the get animals API URL, then I get 200 as the response code. So what I will do is I'll just copy this and then paste it down below. And the first one, we will mark it as for the response code. Okay. Then I get 200 as the response code. And the second test case, we will make it as, then I get animals in the response body of the API. So we are adding both the aspects. Okay, we are adding the aspect of response code as well as the response body. Similar to that, we will add the second test that we had for the negative scenario. We will add the response code as well as the response body. So here I'll just add the line that I get 401 as a response code, and I do not get animals. Okay, so just to reiterate, the first test case is that it's a positive scenario and we are validating the response code in the response. The second test case is that we are validating the response body of the API. Okay, it's an authenticated user, it's a positive test, but we are validating the response body as well. Okay, the third test case is about a negative scenario, that we should not get an response code, as in we should get 401 unauthenticated user, unauthorized user. And we will slightly change the scenarios as well, get animals from the, so that our scenarios are well described for anyone who is looking at our test cases or the features as well. Validation of response code for get animals from the application. So this is the validation. So the second test is about validation of a response body. That is a positive response code. We will add this statement and positive response body. Apart from that, we will add the scenario description for the negative scenarios as well, so that it's kind of well defined validation of a negative response code. And we will add the fourth scenario description as well, which is validation of the negative response body for the get animals from the application. Okay, so we have defined our feature file. Okay, our feature file are defined, but not what is not defined is our step definition. So let us define our step definitions as the next step, and so that our step definitions are called particularly, and Java code is executed, that is API code is executed in our step definitions as well. So let's do that. All right, now that we have defined our feature, which is get animals.feature file, what we will do in this particular section is we will define the step definitions. Okay, so features folder itself will contain .feature file now, which we have created. Now let's go to step definition, and let's create a step definition. So I'll go to this folder and right click and then select as new and then click on Java class, and over here I'll just name this as animals, and just press enter, and my animals class has got created. Okay, so my step definition has got created. Now what I'll do is public void, and then I'll just add this particular statement over here in animals, and I'll just append these statement with underscore, and I have made my method. Now at the rate given is still not getting resolved. So what I'll do is I'll just search, I'll just hover on top of this at the rate given and search for a dependency, and it will look for a dependency related to Rest Assured. I'll just click on import, and you can see that import cucumber.api.java.n.given. Okay, so this is the class that it was looking for, which has got imported, and even our given statement. Now I'll go to get animals and then copy this and then come back to my step definition, and over here I'll just enter this as a given statement. Okay, now I'll go to get animals, and you can see the moment I go to the feature file, you will be able to see that the warning has gone. It means that it is able to identify the step definition, and I'll just hover on top of this particular line, and then I'll do control click. Okay, and then it is leading me to this particular method. So our step definition has been defined. Now apart from that, what I can do is get animals.feature. Now I'll go to when statement. I'll just click on uh, hover on top of this and click on create step definition. Okay, so once I do that, it's kind of an intelligence that our whole project is getting identified that there is a step definition already, which is animals. So I will select this one, and you can see that other step definitions are getting added and 4 usages are getting defined. So this is a pretty good mechanism. First time when you add it, it is important that you get Cucumber API java.n.given that you are importing, and once it identifies, it automatically gets recognized that other statements get synced up already, will automatically create the step definition. We just have to give a direction which step definition folder it is supposed to be, or class it is supposed to be, and then it will get automatically created. So then statement, I'll get a hover on top of this. I get a 200 as a response code. So I'll click on create step definition, and similar way I will be able to create the step definitions. And by that time you are able to understand as well that there are 4 usages. So first, at the rate given method, right, there are 2 usages over here. At the rate when, there are 4 usages. At the rate then, there are 2 usages. Okay, so if I go back to get animals, I'll keep on adding these step definitions as long as everything is getting defined and I don't have any more warnings or errors. So I go to get animals and I am unauthenticated. That also will get added. I'll go to get animals again and then step definition will be added. All right, so all the warnings are gone. Okay, so all the step definitions are defined now, and what it means is that we will be able to proceed with our setting up the step definitions. So only declaration has been made, but nothing is present in our step definition. We have to still define our Java code, and we have to make a call to the that is authenticated user, and we have to get it defined as well. So what I'll do is I'll go to this particular first statement, that is I am an authenticated user. Okay, so I am an authenticated user. I have defined the step definition. Now I'll have to write code specifically to get our access token, right? That is our first step. So if I go to Postman, for example, I'll be able to see that there is a get access token, right? That we had defined. Now over here, if we look at the Postman, you are able to see that we had already passed the client ID and client secret over here. Now what I will do in is there is an easy mechanism to convert this particular Postman call into code. Okay, and how do we do that is we will be able to go in the right hand side and you can see that there is a button over here which is code. Okay, so I'll just click over here, and the moment I click over here you can see that the whole code is got generated. Okay, so this is a Java OK HTTP. Now there are different ways or different programming languages that you can particularly select so that you will be able to get that particular code. Okay, because we are now coding in Java, that's the reason I'll be selecting as Java OK HTTP. Okay, and this gives me the code related to that. So now what we will do is now we will go to the code. We will copy this code. Before that, I'll go here and I will declare an HTTP request. Okay, so I'll define as Rest Assured dot base URI, and we'll set up the base URI as such and end the statement. So the base URI, generally what happens is the base URI will be your base application. Now over here it is API petfinder.com v2, and I'll just select that, copy that, and then come back to my code and then enter over here. Okay, so my base is declared over here, which is API petfinder.com, which is my base URI. Now apart from that, what we need to do is we need to get the token, right? So what I will do is I will declare another HTTP request, HTTP request equal to rest assured dot given, and looks like a HTTP request needs to be declared as such. So we have not declared HTTP request as such, and what we will have to do is we will have to declare this. So what I will do is just below the class, I'll declare this one as public request specification. Okay, so request specification comes along with rest assured. So I'll just select that and then HTTP request. Okay, so I declared HTTP request and we can see that the error is gone. Now, what we have to do is we have to get the access token, isn't it? And for that, we have to make a given call as such. Now, we will make a HTTP request in such a way that we will store it in a response. So let's do that. And I will modify HTTP request little bit. I'll make that as a response, not an HTTP request. So I will just modify this to response. Okay, and then I'll just type this as rest assured dot given method, and then we will give a content type. Okay, and I'll explain what I'm doing, and I'll match it with our Postman as well. So I'll provide content type, and then I'll send a form param, and what we are doing is we are sending three parameters, isn't it? That is client secret, client ID, as well as grant credentials or grant type underscore type. So we will have to send three parameters. So form param, let's add it as 3, And after that, uh, when. Okay, so we have to do a when statement as well, and then post. So let's post it, and then when we do this post, this will get stored in the response. So we are actually declaring the response first itself. Okay, now why the response itself is not able to find, and it cannot find a local variable as a response? For that, what we'll have to do is we will have to put a variable here as a response body. So what I'll do is I'll declare a public and then response, and response is part of rest assured as well. Okay, so we will have to take that in mind. So I have declared this as a response because a request specification and response both come from rest assured. Okay, that's what I wanted to mention. And content type, now content type is something which is different from a normal HTTP transaction. Okay, now we will have to specifically send this as a content type because this is a secret transaction that we are doing. Okay, so if I go back to Postman and we look at the transaction of get access token, if we look at the Java code as well, what we are sending here is a media type. Okay, so we are sending a content type which is a media type. Now if you specifically look at this particular line number 3, okay, so we are sending this as application x www form URL encoded. Okay, now this will happen only in case of your secure transactions. Okay, secure APIs, not a normal APIs but secure APIs. Now that's the reason we will have to specifically send this as a content type over here in our transaction. Okay, this is pretty important. If you don't put this as a content type, your transaction, secure transaction might fail. So I will add a couple of parameters in content type, and what that parameter will be application hyphen x hyphen www hyphen form hyphen URL encoded. And then I'll just send as car set equal to UTF hyphen 8. Okay, now this is a character set which is UTF 8 as well. We will have to send this along with application forward slash x www form hyphen URL encoded. Okay, so this is similar to what we are able to see in this particular area, which is a code snippet. Now the form parameter, okay, what three parameters we were talking about? First is a grant type. Okay, now how do I know that is a grant type? So I'll just come to Postman, and in the Postman you can come to body as well, and in the body you can see that we are passing this as x hyphen www hyphen form URL encoded. That's kind of a body. Now the parameters that we are sending across along with that is grant underscore type. Okay, so I'll just come here and I'll enter here as double quotes, and this will be grant underscore type. And what we will be sending this as an object is client credentials. Okay, it's client underscore credentials to be precise. So that we are sending. Now the second form parameters is the client ID. If I come back here in the client ID, I'll pass on the client ID specifically. Okay, so this is very important. This has to exactly match. Otherwise, our API transaction to get the guest access token will fail. Okay, so it is pretty important. Now we are passing the client secret. Okay, now again, I'm just mentioning that client secret is something that we don't have to show in our code. Okay, we shouldn't be putting it in our code. Reason being, if one of the developer enters a client secret over here, what will happen is another developer will be able to see while looking at the code, and they might get the client secret as well. So this client secret is supposed to be a privilege. Okay, privilege or a permission based on your role. So it might be that the leads know about this client secret values, but the engineers don't know about it. So it is very important that it is mapped to a client secret which is present in some other repository. Okay, now when you are working in a cloud environment, even if it is a AWS environment or Azure environment, which are cloud service providers, they have their own service related to secret keys or key vaults as such, which can be used to hide your secrets. Okay, so you shouldn't be using this directly in your code, but you should be looking for some kind of service from a cloud service so that you do not use it in your code. Okay, so enough emphasize on that particular aspect. Now for demonstration purpose, what I'm doing is I'm proceeding and entering the client secret just to show that we will be able to proceed or design our test case based on that. Okay, so I'll put the object over here in the double quotes. So now the client secret in my case is I'll just copy this one and go back and then enter over here. Okay, so I have entered the client secret as well. Now what I'll do is because it's stored in the response code, right, in the response variable as such, which happens to be a response which is from the rest assured, we will get the body from the response. Okay, so response itself, so when we are doing this transaction of rest assured and this API call itself is happening, what will happen is we will get the response. Now the response itself will contain a lot of values, right? It will contain headers, it will contain the response code, it will contain the body as such. But now let's try to get the body. So for that, what I will do is I'll just create a variable which is body, and I'll just store the response dot get body inside this. Okay, now it's not able to identify what is exactly this body. Okay, so what I will do is I will again come in up area, above area, and I'll just declare a variable which is under our class. Okay, so this will be our response body. Okay, so here I can see a variable which is rest assured response body, and I'll just store it in declare as a body. Okay, so my error is gone. So as you can now sense, what's happening is request specification is coming from rest assured, response itself is coming from our rest assured library, and response body also is coming from rest assured library as such. So this is where the rest assured is very important to make these kind of transactions and store it in the variable so that we can use that variable later on as well. Okay, so now it's stored in the body. Now let's convert this body into a string. Okay, so how do we do that is like, let's first declare a string. So I'll just declare as a string, and then I'll probably name it as response body equal to, and body dot as string. Okay, so we are getting kind of intelligence that from response itself you will store it in the body, and from body we will convert it into a string. Okay, now the reason I'm doing this in the string is because I want to show that we are able to get access token as well. Okay, so I want to see whether the access token really works. So string response body, and after that what I'll do is I'll add a couple of statements over here which is system dot output. Okay, so we'll be able to print our output as well as in log um, in our terminal so that we understand, okay, this is the get access token. So body dot as string, this is something which I'll put, and I'll put one more system dot out print ln. Now body dot as string. Now let this be system dot out dot print response body. Okay, so we are already storing it in the string, and then we will just print out that as string as such. Okay, so our this particular code of getting the body and getting the get access token is ready. So after this, what let's do one thing, let's try to run this. And before running, what I noticed is we are missing one particular thing. Okay, and what we are missing is we are missing an argument within the post. Okay, so our post seems to be empty. Now in the post, what we have to do is we have to define the URL that we are hitting. Okay, endpoint URL. Now what we are doing exactly is rest assured baseline, right? So rest assured dot base URI is something which we have passed as such. Okay, and that's being passed, and after that we will be passing our rest of the endpoint URL as well. So apart from api.petfinder.com v2, what we have to really pass is rest of the details like /, OAuth2, and then / token. Okay, now that we have passed now, and what we'll do is we'll go to this particular section which is build and then rebuild the project, and let's rebuild. Wait for the rebuild to complete. Once the rebuild is successful, we have got a successful message, that is the build completed successfully in 6 seconds. Now we will put a breakpoint. Okay, so when we run the code, it is better to put breakpoint and just to see what really happens at a different lines of the code. So I just put breakpoints and I'll run it in the debug mode. Okay, so I'll just come here in this particular section and I'll click on this debug mode, and then let's run our code, and it has stopped at our breakpoint. Okay, so it has stopped over here, which is rest assured.given. Now we have got the base URI, okay, that is already declared above, which is rest assured.base URI, which is our http api petfinder.com v2. Okay, now I'll just click on this particular resume program, as you can see over this particular button, to proceed with my code. Okay, so it will go to the next line where the exactly the breakpoint is. So I'll just click on resume program, and my API is being called. Okay, so our response has got generated. Now it has stopped at line number 28 because we had put a breakpoint over here, and our response also has probably got generated because it has gone through the line number 21. Now I will hover on top of response and I'll just click on this plus button. Okay, and I'll go to the Groovy response. The moment I go to the Groovy response, you will be able to see that we are getting a status code as 200 OK, which is good. Okay, so we are able to make a successful transaction, that is 200 OK, which means our API was successful, at least from a perspective that it did not give any error. Now what we will do is we will click on resume program again, and when we click on resume program, you might have noticed that our body is also fulfilled. Okay, now we have got a body. I'll just click on this particular button. Now this also gives the Groovy response. Okay, so our body has got stored that is the response body is stored in this particular variable, which is body. Now the line number 30 is about converting this body into a string. Okay, so we are at line number 30. I'll just click on and proceed with resume program, and you can see that we have reached line number 32. Okay, so this is an important thing, that once we reach line number 32, we have got a response body. Now this is a response body which is in the form of a string. Okay, now this string, if you hover on top of this particular response body, you can see that our access token is got generated, which is good. So what it means is our successful transaction has happened, and even our access token has got generated, which is valid for 60 minutes, right? Similar to what we got it in the Postman. So that is got generated through our Java code or a Java automation script as such. Okay, now I will click on resume program, and our code has ended. Okay, now our code has ended, and you can see that we had put couple of statements of system output, right, where we were printing the logs as well, and this has generated the access token. So you can come on this particular section under the terminal, right, in the debugger section, and you can see that our code has got generated, that is, the access token has got generated down below. All right, now this is a very big string, but at least this suffices that our we are able to generate the access token, which we really wanted to do. Okay, now the next step is, once we get the access token, we are able to at least perform and get an authentication user as such, right? Sorry, line number 4, line number 9, both are very similar, right? Kind of reusability. So both the steps are kind of done. We are able to get the authenticated user. Okay, now the next step is to go for coding of when and then statement, at least from a perspective that we are able to hit the API that we need, right? We have to get this get animal type. That's the whole intention of our test. Our intention was not to get a access token, but our intention of whole exercise was to get the access token first and then go for the use that access token in our next transaction so that we get the animal types back. Okay, so let's do that next. All right, now that we have got our access token in our Java code, what we have to do next is we have to design our actual API. Okay, so our actual API happens to be this particular API, which is API petfinder.com v2 types. Okay, now in this particular transaction, right, this is a get call. As you can see, it's not a post call. So to in order to get our get access token, what we had done is we had made a post call so that we get the access token back, which we are able to do that programmatically as well. Now the second one, which is a get animal type, happens to be this particular API, which is a get call. Okay, now the get call itself will not have any body, right? That's what our understanding is. And as you can see over here, we are actually selecting none over here, but we have to pass the authorization. Okay, so we have to pass the authorization over here in the headers. Okay, so that's how we will have to design our automation script as well, that we are passing authorization as a header so that we are making this get API call. So let's proceed to IntelliJ, and you can see that when I hit the get animals, okay, API. So I will just click on this, control click, and then you'll reach over here. And then you can see that we had already defined the step definitions, right? Now, in this step definition, what I'll do is I will have to define um, a get call, right? And the get call has to be designed in such a way that we are passing a header as well, which is a access token. Okay, so let's do that. So in order to pass the access token in our header, first we will have to extract the access token into a string, okay, so that we can use it in the subsequent call. So let's do that. Now what I will do is I will declare a access token as a string. Okay, so here I'll just add here as string access token, and this access token, after it's declared as a string, what we can do is we can call a JSON path. Okay, so this whole response will be a JSON path itself. Okay, so because we if we go back into our Postman, and you can see that this is a JSON format, right? Now as you can see, this response code is a JSON format. We have to extract this particular value, which is access token specifically. Now for this, what we will have to do is we will go back and then we will define the JSON path as a type of JSON path. Okay, so let's do that. Now when I type a JSON path over here, you can see that there is a variable over here which is coming from a Rest Assured library itself. Okay, so JSON path also comes from Rest Assured. Now once I define JSON path, let me put a variable over here which is JSON path, and JSON path equal to, we will put as a response and response JSON path. Okay, now what it means is that we are extracting the JSON path out of this our response that we had got in our API, and once it comes here, it will get stored into our JSON path, and from JSON path we will extract this particular object. Okay, so the JSON itself will have different objects, right? Token underscore type is an object, expires underscore in is an object, and access underscore token is an object. Okay, that is very important. So we have to extract the object now. So for that, what I will do is, because we have declared access token, now I will just type over here as access token, and access token equal to, and we will extract from the JSON path which has got the value. Okay, now from here JSON path we will have to type as dot get JSON object, and get JSON object. What is the exact object is our access underscore token. Okay, now this particular object, now access underscore token is our object, and we'll type this as toString. Okay, so what we are doing is we will extract the object and we will convert it into a string and then pass it into our access token. Now, hopefully our access token gets stored like this. Now, what I will do is I will move this particular instantiation or declaration at least to above. So I'll just move this. I will cut from here and then move it over here. Okay, so I have made this as a public string access token. Now, once I have typed here as public string access token as a variable, because this access token is going to be used in another method. Okay, so we are going to use it in another method or step definition which we have already declared over here. I hit the get animals API URL. Okay, now what I will do is I will use this access token in our second particular method. Now for the using of the second method, right, now we will have to define what's the API that we are going to um, hit. Now for this, I will use a response. Okay, response equal to rest assured. Now rest assured dot given, that's a method, and then dot header. And once we get the header, what we are passing in the header is our authorization, right? Now this is the authorization that we are passing in get animal type. If we go, this is the authorization value that we are passing. Okay, so in our header, I'll have to pass this particular authorization, and after that, after declaring the authorization, what I have to do is I have to pass the value that we are getting from the access token. Now, as you noticed, right, in the authorization, our access token is not access token. That is a combination of couple of strings. One is bearer and another is access token. Okay, so we have to take care in our program or the code as well. So once we go back, you can see that in the double quotes, we will have to declare bearer as well, and then a space. Okay, because there is a space, as you can see, there is a space. We will have to take care of that as well, and then we will have to append a string. Okay, so I will append a string, and how do we do that is with a plus sign, and then I'll just pass the value as access token. Okay, now once I do that, I will have to declare what's the when statement and what's the get statement. Okay, now the get is exactly what we had done previously, right? Now we had passed this rest assured base URI. I'll just copy this and come down, and I'll just type it over here as not a auth o2. Now we will have to replace this one with our get animal types. Okay, so this is types, so I'll just copy this, that is forward slash types, and then replace it over here. Okay, and I'll just end my statement. Alright, now after that, what we are required to do is we are required to verify exactly whether our this particular API is also working. Okay, before we go ahead and the response code. Now the response code also we will have to define, but once we are in this particular statement, which is a when statement, right? Let's check it whether our API is working and whether our response is getting coming or not. Now for that, what I will do is I'll just type here as string and then types and then equal to. Now this is the response, right? Response we are getting the types, and response, that is we will have to put this response into a JSON path, right? Now I will copy this particular JSON path and then paste it over here as well, so that our JSON path is also defined here. Now this can be second JSON path, right? And because we have a couple of responses, first is the response coming from the access token, which is this response. Now we will not use that response. What we will use is the second response. Okay, the second, after the second successful response is hit, we have to check whether that is also coming correctly or not. So that's why I've renamed this as JSN part 2. Now what I will do is I'll just type as JSON part 2, and we will get an object out of this. So get JSON object, and then I'll just type here as types. Okay, now the reason I'm doing typing here as types is if I go back to types, that is get animal type, you can see that there is an object here in the types. Okay, that's the reason I'm trying to extract this whole types and then verifying whether I'm really getting this or not. And after that, I'll just type as toString and then end my statement. Now we will have to check whether this particular statement is really working or not. So what I'll do is I'll just click on debug mode again, and then let us run. And now it has entered the first method, which is our authentication user. So I'll just pass this. I'll click on resume program again, and once our access token has been received, it should proceed with our second method as such. So if I wait over here, that is this is a second method, which is I hit the get animals API URL, and over here if I resume the program, you can see the response that got generated. Okay, so it is using the header as an access token, which is good. So we are passing that, and then I'm just clicking on resume. Okay, now let's hover on top of response. Okay, and once I hover on top of response, I'll just click on this plus button and then go to Groovy response, and I can see I have got the response code as 200. Okay, which is good. So our second API of the animal types is also working. But let's verify whether our type is really getting pasted. Okay, so I'll just proceed, click on resume program, and now it is showing as cannot find local variable types. Okay, now that's because I have not used this types before anywhere or afterwards anywhere. That's the reason it is not showing. So what I'll do is I'll stop this, and then I'll just type here as system, similar to what we did previously, right? System dot out. So it's kind of a logging system altogether. So I'll just type it over here, and then I'll just pass here as types, and let's rerun this and see. All right, now after rerunning, let's hover on top of. All right, now after rerunning, we will hover on top of types, and you can see that the types value is coming, and this is a very big string. Now if I hover on top of types and then if I go here on a plus button, you can see it's a big response code, or it's a big string. Okay, now this is the exact string that we were getting here, that is starting from this particular line number 3. Now, as you can see, there are different objects here, which is name, quotes, and name, which is dog, hairless, short, medium, long, wire, curly, etc. And if I come here, you can see that if I hover on top of type, for example, you can see that the whole string has come. Okay, dog, hairless, short, medium, long, wire, curly, and all that. Now what it means is that we are able to get a successful response as well. That is a get animal type, we are getting it in our particular method as well, which we had designed. Okay, now the couple of tests that we were supposed to add it here is that we get this response code as 200. Okay, as in if we have to validate this 200 okay is coming or not, and apart from that we have to validate the response body as well. Okay, now for the response body, what we can do is we can actually pull up a value here, that is types and then first name as dog. That is a validation that we can put, and this should be constant, or it should be at least validated that the response body is. Now it depends on how really you in-depth test you want to do for the response body as well or not. But having said that, at least I'll show as an example that at least this particular value should be validated. That is, the first name is appearing as dog, and that should be put in our code as such. Okay, so let me design that. So if we go back to Intellij, I'll just stop this particular run, and then I will go to this particular step. Okay, now this particular step is supposed to be response code. Now we have to validate whether the response code is matching to 200 okay or not. So let's put that. So I will just type here as a response dot get status code. Now this will get the status code as 200. Okay, so we'll store it in a particular string. Actually, we'll put it in an int because this is an integer, and then we will put an assert statement, that is assert dot equals. Now assert equal is as I type as assert equal, you can see that I have to import this particular JUnit assert. Okay, so I'll just hover on top of this and click on import static method, which is JUnit. And after that, I'll just add couple of variables here, which is expected response code as well as actual response code. Okay, now actual response code is 200. So after this is done, what I'll do is I'll go back to get animals dot feature, and then I'll just run this particular step, okay, which is run test. I just click here and click on run test. So we are just validating the response code as 200 or not. And our three tests have passed. So as you can see that our test step has passed, that is, sorry, test scenario has passed, which is validation of positive response body. Now let's validate the response body. Now for this, what I'll do is I'll just click on this particular control and click. Okay, so I'll just land over here. Now what we are doing is we are validating the response body. Okay, so for this, what I'll do is I'll just extract the types which we have received over here. Okay, now I'll just type over here as types, and I'll slightly change this particular types as dot name, and I'll just pass the array over here equal to 0. Types dot name is 0, and over here we already got types, so I'll just assert this particular statement, and I'll just put a assert statement over here, and then I'll just type here as types, and then actual is dog. Alright, I'll now rerun. I'll come to get animals and then rerun this particular test step. And our three test steps have passed. As you can see, a dog value has come here. Okay, so if I go back to my statement, that is what exactly has happened is we have passed the value as dogs over here. Okay, type equal to dog. Now types, we were getting the whole method as such, the whole string as such, but we extracted the first name over here and then put it in the types. Okay, both the tests are complete. As you can see that validation of positive scenarios, that we are validating our response code is coming as 200 or not. And the second validation that we were supposed to do is that at least we are validating the response body. Okay, now we can actually go and complicate some of the validations as well, as per your requirement. If you want to validate dogs, cats, and other animals as such, you can put in your API as well. That is possible. But I just gave you an example wherein you can validate the first test or the first object that is coming in the animal type is dog or not. Okay, it depends really upon you how much validations you want to put. You can complicate your validations as well, which helps with your contract management or contract testing. But this is just an example that I wanted to show. Now I will move on to the third test, that is validation of negative method. Okay, negative response code. Now simply what we have to do is we have to hit this particular unauthenticated user. Now if I control and click on that particular feature step or features as such, we will be able to land in the step definitions. Now based on what we had designed for our authentication, right, now we are not doing any authentication in this case. We will be just running our API. So what I will do is I'll just copy here, okay, which we had done in our authentication authenticated user. I'll just copy this, I'll come down and I'll simply paste it in unauthenticated. Now I will not send our um, three parameters, that is grant type, client ID, client secret. I will not pass. Okay, based on which this should fail, it should show a wrong access token, and that's what I want to really happen. Okay, now for that I'll come here and then I'll define the 401 unauthorized as well. So for this, what I'll do is we will have to modify this little bit so that it becomes a argument as such. So what I'll do is I'll just pass here as arg0. Okay, and then come here and then run this particular third test. Now if you notice that I just copied and pasted quickly from already designed test cases, so that kind of helps. So we got an error here, as you can see that we got an error wherein it is showing as failed to pass the JSON document. Okay, now what really happens if we do not pass the grant type, client ID or client secret? Okay, if I click on send, you are getting this particular response which is bad request. Okay, so what it means is it's not 401 unauthorized, but it is 400 bad request. So what I'll do is I'll go back to get animals. Okay, I'll modify this to response code which is 400. Now I'll come here and what it's trying to do, and we have got a error over here, failed to pass the JSON document. Okay, so what it tried to do is try to get the access token and it couldn't find the access token, that's why it kind of failed. Now what I will do is I'll remove this kind of statements. Okay, and then we will remove this statement as well, and then rerun, go to get animals and then rerun this particular test step and then validate the response. So I'm just running the test again. So I'll just rerun this. I'll just click on debug mode again. If I hover on top of response, okay, so if I click on response and if I see the Groovy response, I'm getting 400 in my status code, which is good. Now we are exactly getting what we are getting in our Postman. Okay, now I'll just proceed to click on resume program, and I'll just click on resume program, and then as you can see it has entered into this particular test step, which is I hit the get animals API URL. Now over here we are getting the access token as null. Okay, so it's not getting the access token this time. I'll click on resume, and where exactly it is leading to is we do not require the line number 51 to 53. Okay, so I'll go to get animals and I'll remove this particular line, which is when statement is not required, and over here as well when statement is not required. So we will just validate 400 response code. So I'll just rerun this again and then I go back to get animals.feature, and you can see that we are getting the scenario has passed and two steps have passed. So I'll just run again in a debug mode just to give an insight on this. So here we are getting the body as 400, and then you can see that we are getting exactly the same particular response where what we were getting in the Postman. Okay, so we were getting exactly the same thing that is unsupported, this one. So we are validating that without passing the token we are not able to proceed as such, and it's matching exactly what is required, that is 400 response as well. And over here I will have to make a statement, that is add a statement over here, then statement. That is copy from here and then paste it in this particular section. And because we were passing access token as null for our negative value, there won't be any response getting generated. So similar to if we go for get access, get animal type, and if I remove the authorization over here and click on send, then you can see that the title is unauthorized. Okay, that is access token is invalid or expired. So I'll just copy this particular response code, and over here I'll just modify this as 401 as a response code. So I'll just modify this little bit. Given I hit the without access token, I get a response code as 401. So I'll just copy this, come back to here in our animals, and then I just paste it over here, and I'll make it as a given statement. All right, now I'll just use this, that is unauthorized title, and I'll declare a string over here, public string. And unauthorized is, so this time around we are getting 401 unauthorized, what we were looking for. Okay, so this is 401 unauthorized, and after that we are passing this into our title, and I'll just click on resume, and you can see that the value is unauthorized. Okay, and I'll just click on resume, and I'll remove this particular last statement. Okay, and then I'll rerun this in the debug mode. So we have reached here, and then we will do an assert which is unauthorized, and then we are getting it back as well, and our test steps have passed. All right, now that our all four scenarios have passed, what I will do is I'll just click here and then run by one just to verify that everything is working fine. So I'll just run first test. So first test has passed, which looks good. It has taken 5 seconds. The second test, I'll just click and run. Second test also has passed, which takes 5 seconds, almost 5.5 seconds. I'll run the third test. The third test also has passed, and the fourth test, I'll just click and run. And the fourth test also has passed. Now all the test cases which we had designed has passed. Now apart from that, what we will have to do is we will have to create a runner file, and once we create the runner file, we will run that runner file and not run these test cases individually. Okay, so let's do that so that it is convenient for us to test it in the aspect of running through a Cucumber runner file as such. All right, now in order to create our runner file, what we have to do is, and in my example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to head on to this particular folder, which is source, and under that we have test folder, under that we have Java folder, and under the Java folder, we already have feature folder as well as step definition folder. Okay, so I'll create one more folder here. What I'll do is I'll right click on Java and then select as new and then click on package, and after that I'll just type here as runner. Okay, so what it will do is it will create a directory called runner directory as such, and after that on the runner directory I'll just right click and then select as new and then select as Java class. So I'll make this as a Java class, and here I'll type the Java class name as test runner. I'll press enter on my keyboard, and what has happened is it has created a test runner Java file. Okay, now the Java file itself has been created, but having said that, this is empty right now, and we will have to define our Cucumber runner files as such, because our BDD framework is there and we are using Cucumber as a framework as such. Hence, we will have to proceed with using something like Cucumber options. Okay, so how do we do Cucumber options is, first of all, we will have to add a couple of annotations. So once I type at the rate run, and you can see that there is a JUnit runner file which is run with. So I'll select run with, and the moment I do that, you can see that it has got imported. Okay, so runner file has got imported from JUnit. Now this can be a Cucumber class. So I'll just type as Cucumber and then Cucumber dot class as such. Okay. Now, apart from that, I will have to add another annotation which is Cucumber options. Okay, so at the rate Cucumber options. So this is coming as part of Cucumber API as such. Okay, so I'll just open up and close the brackets as well, round brackets. and I'll add some values over here, which is features, okay, which is important, and this will be in double quotes, and we will fill this value as well. Apart from that, we will add glue. Okay, so glue is another details that we have to pass, and apart from that, I'll just add one more, which is plugin. Okay, so we have added three details over here, which is plugin, glue, as well as features. Okay, now these values have to be in double quotes as such, right? And then we will have to define how features as well as our step definitions are kind of combined together. Okay, now you can notice that there is a cucumber that we wanted to add over here, but it's not getting taken. So apart from that, what I'll do is I will try to or add a statement over here, which is import org dot junit dot runner and then run with. Okay, so this is one statement that I'll add. Now the error has not gone. Now what I'll do is I'll hover on top of this, search for a file dependency, and over here there are a lot of file dependencies it's looking for, right? Which is Cucumber JVM. So what I'll do is I'll select the first one, which is click on add, and then I'll click on add here, and then once I do that, I'll just load the Maven file, okay, as in Maven dependencies as such. All right, so once we have loaded the Maven project as such, you will be able to see that the error is gone. That is, the Cucumber options is at the rate run with option error is gone, and it's picking up from this particular import, which is org.junit.runner.run with. Okay, now what we have to do is because the error is gone, we will specifically look for Cucumber options. Now we will have to define what is a feature. Okay, where exactly is our features, and our features are here exactly. So we will have to give the path starting from source. So I'll give this path as well, src forward slash test forward slash java forward slash features. Okay, so this is my features path, and then glue path as well I'll have to provide. So src forward slash test forward slash java forward slash step definitions. Okay, so we are providing the details and the path of features as well as step definition as such, and plugin. Okay, so the plugin that we'll provide here is a pretty as well as the Cucumber HTML report as such. So I'll just paste this particular. All right, so we have provided all the details like the feature path itself, glue path itself we have given, okay, and we have provided the details about the plugin, and we have provided these details of glue as well as plugin inside a curly bracket. Okay, so all our errors are gone. Now because this test runner file is done, what I'll do is I'll go click on build and click on rebuild project as such, and a rebuild will happen so that we don't have any errors in the project as such. And once the build has been completed successfully, it has taken around 7 seconds of time. So I'll just select here as current file and then click on run test runner.java. Okay, so I'll just click on this run button. Now if you want some more details about how to run the Cucumber file as such or under the test runner, what you can do is you can look for this particular link. Okay, JetBrains gives this kind of link wherein you can set up running Cucumber test as a Cucumber run configuration. You can follow the same instructions which have been provided on the this particular page. Is quite informative, but having said that, I'll just guide you on that as well. So what you can do is you can go and click on this particular run test runner. Now once I ran this particular runner file, I have got this error, which is java lang no class definition found error. Now this we will encounter if we have a incompatible Cucumber version as such. So we might have to go to pom.xml and then modify our Cucumber files or the version itself so that it is compatible with the project as such. Okay, so if the project that we were on, if I scroll up, and the project is a 2.3.1. Okay, now 2.3.1, if I go specifically and look for Cucumber and Cucumber JUnit, so I'll go back to Maven repository and over here I will search as Cucumber JUnit, and this is the JVM as such. Okay, so 2.3.1 is what we were looking for, which is the version that we have specifically selected over here. Okay, so there is 2.3.1. So this is the version that we had specifically pulled up for the Cucumber version. So I'll just copy this for the JUnit version. Okay, so I'll just scroll down here. I'll just replace this with the JUnit version, and then Cucumber JVM as well we will require. Okay, so I'll go back, and Cucumber JVM is something that I'll be looking for, and then press, and over here I'll just go here and I'll select for 2.3.1, which is this one. So I'll just select here. I'll just press on load Maven. It will resolve the dependencies. I'll go for build and rebuild and press test runner. And then we have got an error over here, which is that our steps are not defined. Okay, so the feature file, it has picked up the feature file as such, but it has not got the feature. So what we'll do is we have got this particular error where the feature files that we are passing from here. Okay, so the feature files is working fine, but it's not able to find the step definitions. Okay, so you are able to get this particular error wherein the step is undefined throwable, that is, the step is not defined. Now this happens, and this is very important. Why this happens is that you have already given this path of features. Okay, now what you do is you just give the step definitions path. Okay, now step definitions is exactly down below here. Okay, so it will already come to this particular path, and then it will look for this step definition, and from there the test will start. So what I after this modification, what I'll do is I'll go to build, I'll click on rebuild, and when I do the rebuild, and you might have noticed why I do rebuild. Rebuild actually removes all the caches and then builds the project again. Okay, so this is a kind of a removal of cache. It kind of clears the cache and then runs again. So I'll just click on test runner again, just to make it as a clean run, and then you can see the test has started. Okay, so first test that has started, first test has completed, it has taken 6 seconds, second one has taken 2 seconds, third one has taken even less than 1 second, and the fourth one has taken less than 1 second. So all in all, our whole test has run within 10 seconds of time. As you can see, there is 10 seconds of time it has taken. And we had added one plugin over here, right? It was a pretty plugin, and we had provided a couple of reports. One was Cucumber HTML report, okay, and another was a cucumber.json. So both has got generated. Now as we can see that there is a file over here, cucumber.json. It's in a JSON format, okay, which can be integrated with third-party systems like Atlassian Jira and all. Apart from that, we can look at something which is a readable report as well. So if I look at the target, okay, and I have decollapsed the target, I will go to Cucumber HTML report, and over here there is an index.html. So I'll just right click over here and then open in, and then look for a browser and click on Chrome. Okay, so once I have clicked on Chrome, you can see that this HTML report has got generated. Now there are 4 scenarios. Okay, so first one is a positive scenario which looks for a code, response code. Second is a positive test, which is a response body. The third one is a negative response code, and the fourth one is a negative response body. Okay, now if I decollapse this, you can see we are getting all the given, when, then statement, which we had designed in our automation scripts using Rest Assured. Okay, so this is how we generate the report as well, and this is how we run it in the runner file as well, and we have successfully created this automation scripts which are designed specifically from the Rest Assured perspective. And what I will do is I will push this project into GitHub URL as well. I'll provide the README document, okay, before I push it into a remote repository, and I will provide you the link as well with the README document, so that it's helpful for you to verify the code itself which is present. So I hope you have learned about the secure APIs, how we are supposed to test the secure APIs, even manually through automation as well. And better to automate it if the things are getting repeated. It is better to put it in a test automation framework, use the libraries which are present by the testing community, and that kind of helps us to set up the whole design and framework as such. Thanks for listening. I hope you like this whole video. If you like it, kindly like, share, and subscribe. Happy coding and happy automation testing.